Alrighty, friends, we're gonna call the Smart Board of Directors meeting to order here for February 22nd at 2:03 p.m. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Ms. Martin, can we get a roll call, please? Here.
Vice Chairperson Britt Brazigan. Ms. Sheila Cote.
Present.
Dr. Curtis Ivory is participating by Zoom. Can we show him on the screen if that's possible?
I'm here.
Okay. Mr. Royce Manico is also participating by Zoom.
I'm here.
Diana McBroom.
Here.
Mr. Assad Turfi.
Here.
Excellent. Thank you. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Been moved?
Support.
Been supported? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're gonna go certification of public notice. Please, Ms. Martin.
I didn't mean to be sitting back.
Smart will hold the Board of Directors meeting on Thursday, February 27th, 2025 at 2 p.m. on the 6th floor of the Buell Building, located at 535 Griswold Street, Suite 600, Detroit, Michigan.
On behalf of things.
All physically present at the meeting must adhere to the following. Please respect anyone needing or choosing to wear a mask. People with symptoms of COVID-19 or exposure to someone COVID-19 should wear a mask. People positive for COVID-19 may not attend the meeting in person and should access a recording using the YouTube link below. The agenda can be found on Smart's website. Members of the public may attend in person. The meeting will be live streamed on YouTube and available at the following link, the YouTube link at My Smart Bus. Members of the public may also submit a written comment to be read during the public comment period by emailing smartboard.org by 1:15. Requests for reasonable accommodations at Smart require advance reservations. Individuals with disabilities requiring assistance should contact us. Public comments will proceed as follows. All comments, 3-minute limit per member of public. Kindly state your name and county of residence. Public comments will be received in the following order. Members of the public who attend in person, written comments via email. The board administrator will read any submitted comments. This meeting is open to the public.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Appreciate that. Next, we will look to approve the board meeting minutes from January 27th, 2025 that are in your packet. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Been moved?
Support.
Supported? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we will move on to public participation. Any members of the public willing to address the board today?
I don't want to wait too long here.
How we doing, Mr. Rayner?
Good afternoon. Mike Rayner, Chesterfield Township in Macomb County. Mike, the bus stop guy, actually is what most people know me by. Two issues I just want to mention. My two main concerns at the moment are lack of transportation to where the jobs are. And the big one for me, there's two, westbound on 23 Mile Road and Hall Road. Hall Road with those thousands of jobs and no buses. The second one I'm going to try to spend a few minutes on are the conditions of these stops and the shelters. I think my biggest disappointment, which I think is going to be corrected here soon, is the failure of the Adopt a Stop program. You know, I printed up that information today because I was going to adopt another one. When I did my first a couple of years ago, I found out that there were 11 that were adopted before I adopted mine. When I printed that information up today, there were still 12 in all that time. And when I call, I want to talk to somebody in the Adopt a Stop program. And so I called the operator, and she obviously didn't know exactly what I was talking about. So she sent me to somebody else, and they didn't know, and somebody else. And so finally, luckily, I called Erica Delane, and she was kind enough to give me the name of Corey Rowe, who I spoke with. I was very, very impressed with his attitude about taking on that responsibility. Had a good, enthusiastic attitude. So anyway, I got to keep going. Okay, so I want to mention a couple of things. I always kind of bring my props. I got two props today. So I got my grabber and I got my glass cleaner. So when you adopt a stop, you hardly get any stuff. You get trash bags, you get some spray window stuff, and what else do you get? But you don't get something like, how do you pick up, the messy stuff that's on the ground. So we need a grabber, but I don't want to overdo that. But it's really very, very important. And a pair of gloves. The other thing is, one of the big issues are cigarette butts. So I actually put a little container on the top of the lid of the trash can, which worked pretty good. And those are available. That would be an easy way to provide a ashtray. No power washing. Now, one of my stops, the guy will let me use my garden hose and I can hose it out. But no, no, you need a power washer, folks. The garden hose doesn't do it. And I actually rented somebody to power wash. I hired somebody to power wash and to wash the windows. So, so I don't know. I think we need to really. Oh, that reminds me. I suggested everybody kind of like jump on a bus and go down Grash and take a look at the shelters, see what they think. I don't know if anybody ever did that, but if they did, I think our shelters would be in better condition. They're bad. They're really bad. Believe me. I look at them almost every day. So anyway, I'm hoping that we can address the appearance. When you see a lot of people standing outside the shelter, just go in the shelter and you'll know why they're standing outside, because it's just not it's not sanitary inside. So please, we need to address those two issues. Let's clean them up, please. And I was a store manager for years in retail. The managers have to follow up, see how their team is doing, see if we're accomplishing our goals. So looking at so many of them, I'm not sure that we're really following up and paying too much attention. So please, let's clean them up. That's our main job. We have women with children, we have elderly people, and sometimes they can't even sit down.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Any other members of the public seeking to address the board this afternoon?
I'll let you read the comments. You just have two, right?
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Stephen Hammondtree. I live in East Point. Before I get into the detail of my comment, I want to state for the record that I've made a request for extra time to speak today on the grounds of being denied my comment in October. Has that request been received and is it approved?
It has been received. It's up to the chair to approve the request.
Mr. Hammondtree, please address the board.
Okay. In October, the comment I emailed to the board was, I want to raise several concerns about SMART at this point, seemingly deliberately trying to minimize public involvement and participation in mandatory meetings. I would love to have made this comment in person, but I got sick, so I'm stuck writing and submitting a comment 2 hours in advance. The problem is I'm writing this at 11:50 and I can't see an agenda yet. I've been given no opportunity to comment on anything the board wishes to discuss today, and now the board will have those discussions and make those decisions before that can change. Not that it would really have mattered anyway. The past few meetings I've been to, SMART has been ignoring their own policy of the board administrator will read any submitted comments. Last month, immediately after another member of the public reminded her that the policy is to read comments out loud, the board administrator informed the members of the board that there were emailed public comments and she has forwarded them to the board members' email inboxes, thus ending public comment. I did not see the members of the board checking their emails before proceeding with discussion. Those comments were thus removed from being considered before the adoption of any agenda items, defeating the whole point of emailing them. And honestly, can it even be said that they were read afterwards? I also want to complain about a lack of public participation in service changes. Several bus systems have meetings open to the public for every service change being made. CODA in Central Ohio, Mountain Metro of Colorado Springs, and even closer to home, DDOT does it. Smart doesn't, and meanwhile, bus stops can vanish without notice. Twice in the past month, I found out that a bus stop is on 9 Mile is gone by trying to use it, not at a meeting discussing whether it should or even a note if it was posted on Smart's website. One of those bus stops was the closest one to my house on the westbound route. That concludes my emailed comment for October. And I was watching that meeting in the live stream, and I don't believe it was even mentioned that day that emailed comments existed, let alone following the policy of reading them out to the board. Then on the way here, I was involved, the bus I was on had a mirror-to-mirror crash with a parked truck, and that bus had to go out of service, and so I had to catch the next one and be late. You may have noticed me walking in at 2:07 p.m. today. I was starting to write my comment on the way here, but again, the board agenda was not posted, so I couldn't write on anything on the agenda in advance. I did notice at 2 o'clock that it was posted, but that is beyond the 1:15 p.m. deadline today of submitting a public comment. I also wish to, and this is being addressed, but I wish to bring to the board's attention that Smart has several drivers that are not complying with one of the provisions of the Americans with Disabilities Act, stating that the lift or ramp must be available to any passenger with a disability that wishes to use it. The text of the law explicitly says including standees. It sets forth one exception, which is that if a bus is using a lift that was stopped being manufactured 4 years before I was born and says they're using that lift on the outside of the vehicle, then they are not required to use that lift to bring standees onto the bus. That is all I can think of right now. So thank you for your time and have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Hammondtree. Appreciate it. Any other members of the public looking to address the board? Going once, twice, 3 times, and we will close public comment.
Chairman.
Ms. Martin, sorry.
We have-
Oh, yes, that's my bad. Sorry. Ms. Martin, if you would, please.
Well, technically, we have 2 comments via email, but we will only be reading one because of his comments. Go ahead, Warren. You don't, oh, you can't see it.
The comment is as follows. This is from, let's see, Serena is the name. Hello, I live in West Dearborn and would previously use a very efficient fast to work and play in downtown Detroit. This was a quick route with limited stops. Are there plans to restore fast travel, allowing limited stops to and from downtown Detroit to Dearborn down Michigan Avenue? Can we expect any overall fast upgrades down Michigan Ave overall from Detroit, Dearborn, Amtrak, or the airport? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Appreciate that. I sincerely apologize for overstepping there. Next, we're going to move on to the chairperson's report. I am thrilled that a friend, colleague, and a close confidant, Mr. Assad Turfi from Wayne County, is joining the board. Assad, as Deputy County Executive over in Wayne County, is a true advocate for mobility advancement across Southeast Michigan in transit. And Assad, welcome, and thank you for taking on the responsibility of joining this board.
Of course, thank you. Looking forward to working with everyone.
Yep. I think it's absolutely going to be wonderful if not only we can align ourselves more and more with the executive's office in Wayne County as they're looking at a number of aspirations to not only optimize everything that we're looking at doing here at Smart from the Smart Mobility strategy, but really provide different inroads to how we're expanding service options to everyone in Wayne County and across the region. So welcome, Assad, and we're glad that you're willing to jump into this with us.
Yes, no, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep, excellent. Alrighty, next we are going to move on to the financial report and we are going to get a second quarter financial report update from Ryan. Ryan, how are we doing today, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
And I believe all the information is disseminated in the presentation packet in the Q.
Yes, it is. You have a copy of the financial report in the board book.
Correct.
Yep. Overall, is a good quarter for Smart. We remain stable, able to meet all of our current obligations. We are well within budget, and things seem to be moving along quite well. With regard to the balance sheet, I do want to make one quick comment that we are working with our partners at the state and federal government to collect as much as we can on our grant receivables. We have been working through a couple of issues, but we should see that balance start to creep down in the quarters to come. So that is something that we are working on. With regard to the operating revenues, while we are a little bit behind budget on operating revenues, this is largely a result of us not needing to draw certain federal grant revenue, just based on our financial position during the quarter. We'll continue to monitor that and look at it over the quarters to come. With regard to wages, for the second quarter through December, we're about $2 million under budget. That is largely a result of headcount. As we continue to make progress in that regard, we've seen over the last few years that this number has been much closer to budget than it has in the past, and we should continue that trend into the quarters to come. With regard to our other operating expenses, we are about $4 million under budget, which is largely a result of cheaper than expected fuel, which is great, as well as our vehicle liability expenses. There are not as many claims as we had expected. And again, we're looking at only 2 quarters. These claims can take several quarters or several years to develop, but this is good news. Other than that, Smart is approximately $2.3 million under budget. So it remained a pretty good quarter. And I'd like to open it up to any questions that you may have on the financial statements.
Ryan, appreciate the update in that. And any questions from members of the board? Being none, the chair would entertain a motion to receive and file.
Should have.
Moved and
Second.
supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we are going to look for a resolution for appointment of the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget committee. Apparently we time traveled. Ryan?
So yeah, we're looking for members to sit on the budget committee, whose main responsibility is to advise and review the Smart fiscal year 25-26 budget process. We are looking to do a budget committee meeting in April, followed by taking that final budget to the board in May. And if we could, Mr. Chair, if you would appoint 3 members, including a chair, that's what we're looking for today.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. Ms. Cote, if there's no objection, as I am chair, would you mind sitting?
I would be happy.
Thank you. Appreciate that. How about our friends from Oakland? You guys gonna rock, paper, scissors? Thank you, Mr. Razigan. Appreciate it. And Assad, I'm gonna leave it up to you. You are Dr.
Yes.
You get to,
Yeah,
you're present.
yes. So, Dr. Ivory, any interest? I'll do it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Turfy. And then, Mr. Razigan, would you mind sitting as chair on that committee?
Yes.
Excellent. So we have Mr. Razigan as chair from Oakland County, Ms. Cote from Macomb County, and Mr. Turfy from Wayne County. The chair would entertain that motion, please. Been moved,
Second.
been supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Farrell, what's happening?
Oh, we're always happy to be here. My report will be brief this month. There are lots of briefings, some much more important information. But what we have started over the last couple of days this week, we've embarked on the process of developing strategic plan outlined for the organization, which we hope to have a strategic plan completed no later than the end of this year. And we're also starting to put in place the first performance evaluation process for administrative employees in Beth can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the history of SMART, so that we can adequately evaluate employees and their performance. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Appreciate that. Next, we're going to move on to the board briefings. First is the HR hiring update. Tiana, how are we doing today?
Here to present the hiring update for the month of January 2025. So in the month of January 2025, we hired a total of 6 paratransit operators and 1 mechanic, which brought our total to 7 hires for the month of January. We did not hire any fixed route operators in the month of January. For our fixed route operators, the total budget is 426. Out of the 426, we do have 408 active operators, leaving 18 vacant positions.
That's good news.
How many do we have any in training?
Currently, right now, we had 17 new hires start February 10th. So right now, that would actually make us just short 1.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we can. Yep. The chair will allow it.
Thank you. For our paratransit operators, we have a total of 142 operators. We have 134 active, leaving a total of 8. Current to date, we do have for our paratransit, I'm sorry, I do have a note here. No, so for February, that would be current.
Perfect.
We have 8 vacant positions. For mechanics, we did hire 1 mechanic, but due to attrition, 1 mechanic did retire, so that is a good thing. But it just, so we have a total of 85 budgeted positions, 65 are active and 20 open. Currently, right now, for the month of February, we did hire 2, so that will leave 18 open positions for mechanics. That does conclude my report for the hiring update, and I'm available for any questions.
Tiana, incredible work by you and the entire HR team, and obviously the training folks and onboarding. I think we've made tremendous strides in here in the transparency and openness that we've had with regards to not only everything that we've done in collective bargaining, but the creative elements with regards to onboarding. I think have paid tremendous dividends. So congratulations to you and the entire team.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it. The chair would entertain a motion to receive and file. Been made? Been supported? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we're going to move on to the ridership update. Danny, how are we doing today? And Danny, I believe we've got 2 presentations on our end from you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, we're going to start with the paratransit ridership update. So first, we want to acknowledge that the vehicle that is on the screen right now is our new paint scheme. These vehicles are starting to hit the streets. We have a few of them out right now. The drivers like them. The passengers have given a lot of positive feedback on the looks of them. Mr. Farrell?
They don't all have people's faces on them.
They do not. No, 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 no.
So we don't have,
No, this is the.
we don't
operating-
have 134 different vehicles with 134
No, no,
different
no,
faces
no.
on
And
them.
for the
Very good
record-
point, very good point.
Anyone puts my face on a bus, we're shutting this whole place down.
Wait, you didn't get Bernard's email?
That's not
about-
cool,
okay,
Danny.
Okay.
Not
all right.
cool.
Not
cool.
There you go, there you go.
We're gonna shut it down. No, no.
So one of the things we have learned about this is that the need for increased marketing as we have changed the vehicle scheme is definitely there. So in the spring, we are lining up to have a big rollout of going to different communities and explaining and showcasing these new vehicle styles. We did learn from one passenger as he started to roll out that some riders are trained to only get on a white with a red swoosh bus. So we've
Oh.
added it to our phone line. We've made people aware. And then this image or an image of this vehicle can be emailed to people. And so if somebody is working on behalf of somebody, they can show them this is the new paint scheme. And we can make that available individually.
One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we did, because it was for reporting purposes.
Mhm.
Connector was considered a single entity when in fact it was on demand and paratransit.
Yes.
Paratransit is a service for the disabled, regardless of age, you have a disability that you have to meet. That reporting for that ridership is separate and apart from any others.
Yeah.
And so part of what we have been doing over the last 3 or 4 years, as some of you may recall, we actually briefed the board on what paratransit is.
Yes.
So this is just part of that evolution so that people can understand the difference between paratransit and anything else.
Correct. So very excited. And I know, Mr. Farrow is looking forward to another presentation of us being in the community and showcasing these vehicles as the board. So,
Without the face on it.
as we talk a little bit about ridership, we did in Q4, we did see a slight drop. This is as a result of the demand response that Mr. Farrell had mentioned, not more on the ADA side, but on the demand response due to still the driver shortage that we're experiencing, but also when the holidays fall, it has a influx on when on our ridership for paratransit. Our on-time performance, well, it dipped a little bit, still remained very strong at over 86% of an on-time performance. And that's given all the wonderful construction in the area and a lot of new drivers still navigating the area. So for that number to be that strong, we're very proud of that. Well, we did see the most significant drop just on the weekdays, my apologies. And that was, again, mostly the general service side. As we mentioned when we did the Q2 report, we have been seeing increases on the weekend service, and we continue to see that here in Q4. The Saturday alone ridership went up by 600 over that period. So that's still continuing to this year as we continue to monitor it. And then Sunday is seeing the same thing, more significant drop given the number of passengers overall. We have been tracking it again and seeing a kind of an equalization of no-shows from year to year, a slight increase this year. It's something that our staff works on, and that, one of the needs for the technology improvements that we all talk about is, getting apps that can notify people when the vehicles are there and reduce this no-show, which does have an impact on on-time performance and other key metrics. And the last slide that we wanted to talk about was our cancels did go down. And that's something that, is obviously very big. It can be detrimental to service and a lot of disruptions, but to have this reduce was a very good thing for us. So before I move on to the Flex update, any questions from the board?
Danny, really appreciate the update and also want to applaud the entire customer service team, obviously with coordinating rides and the scheduling team and everything. And definitely tremendous strides that we've taken, obviously, with the new fleet. And as you said, the onboarding of some of those new notification technical elements, I think are going to really help with the day-to-day side.
I think so too. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding paratransit? All right, let's move on.
So move over to the Flex report. So we did see a drop in Flex ridership. Again, some of that's due to holidays. We did see more rides in some of the lower performing zones that have been kind of coming right side. So that's a good thing, even though we did see a slight reduction in ridership. I know Mr. Reyes again had asked last month about starting to get figures on how many riders with disabilities are using Flex. We're working to get a big plot of where they sit in relation to all of our routes. But we were able to go through the database and find that we have over 5,000 riders that identify as having a disability. That's separate from the senior group, but just identifying riders alone that have a disability was over 5,000 in our database. Our ETA remained pretty consistent. You'll see later on that we did see a slight uptick in ride length, which has obviously a cascading effect on other factors. The utilization has gone up slightly. So our benchmark for this when we launched the program was to have 2.0 or better. And as I've said in a lot of presentations, that we've always exceeded that 2.0. To see this continue to go up overall is still a positive, being in the 4th year of this program. The ride distance, as I had mentioned, has increased from about 4.5 miles per trip to 4.6 miles per trip. And obviously, as you can, given the magnitude of trips we're doing overall, does, have an impact on the rides. And then very happy that our cost per ride is actually slightly decreasing. So this is with the new rate going into effect, but better utilization helped reduce the cost per ride. The last thing I wanted to mention is at your table this morning or this afternoon, you should have all received a pin celebrating our 1 millionth ride, and then some of the M&Ms that were provided by our vendor to reach that milestone as well. So wanted to acknowledge those and hope you enjoy those. So with that, any questions on Flex?
Mr. Chair, Danny, can you talk a little bit about marketing tailored for people with disabilities, especially cognitive disabilities, and also seniors who might struggle with, technology?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
So we're pretty active in all of the zones. And even as we look to the future, we get asked to come to areas that don't currently have Flex to explain what the service is. They hear about it. It's not in their area. They want to ask the questions if it's coming here. So we go to existing zones and potential future zones. We go to senior centers, community centers. We are available by phone. One of our assistant vice presidents actually walked a passenger through Flex, how to download it, how to enter a credit card yesterday. So our staff is very active, as is our partner with VIA. They are very active in just kind of holding people's hands to understand how to book a ride, how to understand what the service area is, if there's any connections being made. But our presence in the community is one that our staff takes very wholeheartedly. They go to events, I want to almost weekly. They are somewhere spreading the word about not just the program, but how to utilize it. And that's really been our biggest positive of this service.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Cote, also, I will mention, we do the same thing for paratransit.
Okay.
That is a service that, people don't know about. They don't understand
Right.
that if they can't get to the bus, that there are alternatives. So the ADA staff does just the same amount of work, either on the phone or being out in the community, just educating people and walking them through the application process. And lastly, I'll say on the ADA side, and on the Flex side, we will be returning our ADA webinars this year. And so we invite social workers, caseworkers, people who can touch multiple levels. And we do a whole webinar on our service area, the different services, the application process and all that. And then they can take that information, but then they also get a point of contact at SMART. And that follow-up really helps mitigate the frustrations of the process.
I was just going to ask you if you had any videos or trainings for professionals out there. Do you do trainings, video trainings for individuals, or is it all personal?
I know Bernard's
one-to-one?
team, one of the biggest goals was to create YouTube videos on how to board a bus, how to utilize that, how to use the call center. That's on the horizon for SMART.
And Danny, you might want to talk to her about travel training.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, some of that has been done. Yeah. And we also do have a travel trainer who's on staff who's completed her training. And she is very active with existing riders, but again, newer riders, teaching them to use the family of services, right? It's not just paratransit, but education on fixed route, on paratransit, even Flex. So that person has to wear a multitude of hats of knowing what that person can fit, where they live, looking at what their common trips are.
Great. Thank you so
Mr.
much.
President.
Hey, Danny.
Yes, sir.
Pontiac used to lead, Pontiac Flex used to have the most rides, best utilization. Is it still? on top?
It is,
Okay.
yes. The zones that have really risen lately have been Troy and Dearborn. We have seen ridership really growing in those. A lot has been a focus on making sure there's, more vehicles, enough vehicles in those zones at all times.
Wow.
That's helped ridership, helped reduce seat unavailable rates too.
Can you send us the Pontiac and Troy numbers
Yes,
separately? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then one other question,
Yeah.
the $20 per ride does that consider the fare too? What can you?
No, so
explain
the
what-
cost
what
per
that
ride is our hourly rate and how many passengers per hour are in that vehicle. So if VIA charges us $50 an hour and we can get 3 passengers in that, the cost per ride is going to go down. So we look at that rate and divide by passengers per hour.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Any other questions from members of the board? Seeing none, can I receive get a motion to receive and file, please?
So moved.
Been moved,
Second.
been supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
it. All right, next Harmony's up for 2 items. We're gonna start with the bus stop design manual. Harmony, how are we doing today?
Good, we're starting, I have 3 items, I'm do fixed route
perfect.
real
Yep.
quick. Thank you. Gonna pull it up here. So this is the ridership for the fourth quarter of the calendar year. We have it listed as the second quarter because that's the fiscal year. It is the same period that Danny just covered, so October to December of 24. If you look at the total ridership for the quarter, it's about 1.8 million riders. And if we look at the comparison to last year, the same time period, we're up about 12% in ridership, which is great. I did want to mention, you see the line going down. It's higher in October, down in November and December. As you can see from looking back at the 23, this is a normal dip that we see in ridership. What we'll see is January is typically the lowest month, and then it starts to climb and it goes back up all through the spring until school gets out. We see a temporary decrease in the summer, and then it starts to rise again. So these are all very typical dips and ebbs and flows, and we expect that we'll see it go up. But the good news is that year over year, we are seeing a 12% increase.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Have you made a connection why the 10 to 12% increase? Was there anything that, any programs that were initiated, or what was the reason for the increase?
Sure. I think that there's a couple things. One is adding Oakland County, and the additional service that we're providing would just naturally bring our numbers up. And then I also think that our addressing the driver shortage and being able to not miss trips, and also to increase people's confidence in the service, has brought some of them back that have had left in the past few years.
Thank you.
So this slide just shows that I just pulled this because I thought it may be of interest to you. This is our top 3 routes, 1 in each county. So Woodward is Fast Woodward, as you'd expect, is the highest ridership in Oakland, and it hovers around 60,000 rides a month. Fast Michigan is the top route in Wayne County, and that's about 40,000 a month. And then the 560 Gratiot is the highest in Macomb County consistently, and that's somewhere around 70,000 a month. So great numbers and very highly utilized. We don't have any empty buses on these routes. And then I did pull this just because it's now been a good period of time, but this is still our first year of operation for the 492 Rochester. We all celebrated this back in April when it kicked off. So I wanted to give you a picture of the ridership. It's doing great. Year 1 is typically a low ridership, as you, especially for a brand new route, because people are still learning about it. So we're seeing somewhere around 7,000 riders a month, which translate to maybe 300 to 400 people a day are using the service. So that's on Rochester. And then Highland, which started in June or the beginning of July. We are seeing great numbers for that too. They're not as high as Rochester, but that's to be expected because the Highland route goes in areas that are much less populated. But it's a real important route that it runs along M59 West and fills a gap that previously had been unserved. We are seeing probably about 150 to 200 riders a day on that route. So all good things with fixed route ridership. I can answer any questions.
Questions for Harmony? Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Been moved? Supported? Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Thanks, Harmony. Next, bus stop design manual. Excellent.
Yes, so on this one, I have the enviable task of making bus stops interesting for all of you. So we are going to move through it pretty quickly, but it's exciting stuff and it's very important to the public. And so it's important to us. So we wanted to share with you that the planning department recently completed the bus stop design manual. This is the foundation of getting ready to kick off a very intensive transit infrastructure improvement process. To do that, we need to have the building blocks and to understand strategically what we're going to be doing so that it's done effectively and efficiently, and that we don't have somebody in 10 years having to go back and clean up some of the things we did because we acted in haste. So I want to thank HNTB as the consultants that worked with us on this, and then especially acknowledge Jordan Van Zinda from my department because he was the project manager on this. It was his first project management and he did a stellar job. So I appreciate Jordan. So the overall goals of this manual is to ensure safety for all in our design, being considerate of all street users, not just bus riders and passengers, but pedestrians and automobile users. Make sure that our stops are consistent and barrier-free, that we have a unified street vehicle and platform design. So we will have some variations in the stops, but there will be some method to the way that we are putting them in. Universal design is equitable design, so ensuring that everyone has access regardless of physical ability. And to make sure that we're integrated in the surrounding streetscape. People appreciate bus stops, even if they're not a user, when it looks aesthetically pleasing and it makes sense with everything else that's in the area. So what did we do to create this, or what did we use? We looked at a lot of resources. We looked at our own smart policies, our service standards, which I'll touch on in just a minute. We looked at the national best practices and a lot of agencies like the American Public Transit Association and others that provide guidelines. And then we looked at other transit agencies across the country and what they were doing and what was effective and what we wanted to copy. So one very important part of this was our Title VI service standards. And service standards are the guidelines that SMART creates for itself to ensure that its services and its amenities are being delivered in an equitable manner. This deals with all aspects of service. We're going to touch on specifically how bus stops and stop spacing play into that. So we're looking at the service availability. And when I say that, I mean, how far does somebody have to walk to get to a bus stop? How far do they have to walk to access it? That's something that plays into a Title VI consideration. And then the distribution of transit amenities. It's very important that we don't only put shelters in higher income areas or that we only run buses in certain places and not others, that everyone has access to service. And so we're always looking at how the amenities get distributed, and we have a methodology to make sure that those are equal. So what did we do to determine that, or how do we determine that? Here's some examples. These aren't meant for you to like read every line. I just wanted to give you a snapshot. They're in the manual, so if you have an interest, you can look at them. But these are some of the items the planning department uses to determine how bus stops are going to be spaced. There's a table, there's guidelines, who's going to get or where shelters are going to be placed, and what other amenities a bus stop will have. There's again, a methodology to this by counting the number of people using the stop. Are there buses coming frequently? Because that means people are waiting less, so they don't maybe need a shelter as much as where a stop bus is only coming every 60 minutes. How many people are getting on the bus compared to how many people are getting off the bus? This is something people don't think about a lot. It's something I learned when I got into transit, that oftentimes it's assumed there should be a shelter on both sides of the road. If there's one on one side, you should put it on the other. But if you look at something like people are coming from, say, Macomb County into Detroit, and that's the primary direction that they're traveling south, you would want to have a bus stop where everyone is boarding the bus. So going south, you want it because people are standing and they're waiting on the bus. But when they're coming north, the majority of people are getting off the bus and they're leaving. People don't get off the bus and then stand at the shelter. So when you're weighing out where amenities go, oftentimes you'll say, we don't need one there because people just aren't waiting at that stop. They're getting off the stop and they're walking home or getting into their car and driving home. So there's oftentimes people don't understand how we decide where stops, where shelters and benches and stops are placed, but there is a reasoning behind it, and we hope that this manual helps define that for people. And it will help you when you get a constituent that requests a stop and you refer them to us, that we're able to walk through them with this so they can understand. Stop spacing, that's how far apart bus stops are. It used to be the older school thinking was that you put bus stops a quarter mile apart, no matter what. It doesn't matter if it made sense or not. You stuck that pole in the ground. And as you drive around Metro Detroit, you will see stops that look like they're placed in the middle of grass, in the middle of nowhere. And you're thinking, how did that happen? It was because that was the way things were done, and people just did it because they were told and maybe didn't put the thought behind, do we really need this stop? That's changed. And now there's a recognition that maybe you don't need stops every quarter of a mile if it's a more rural area, if it's in the middle of a field. You want to be thoughtful about where you're putting stops and ensuring that they make sense, because the more times the bus has to stop, the cost goes up. So it's important that we reduce stops and get people to board at the same time. Go ahead.
Let me qualify this. The more times the bus has to start,
Okay.
the fuel consumption is greatest on a bus when it accelerates. So when us minimizing that saves lots of money. And just an example, back in, well, some of you weren't born then, but back in the 70s, when the country first started experiencing issues with fuel, most transit systems picked up every other bus stop for that reason, because it reduced their fuel bill by about a third.
So we are, as we go through and do our bus stop improvement, we'll be looking at stops, and there will be some removed that are very underutilized stops that no longer make sense. And then finally, the last thing is stop placement and what our standards will be. And this will be important for the community, because we are going to take a hard stance that we are not going to put stops where a community does not have sidewalks. It's important. It is critical that for us to put a stop and to invest in putting a concrete ADA pad, that pad connects to something so that our riders can get off and not be in the street.
Technically, it's not compliant.
Yes.
We could have an ADA pad there, but if you don't have a way to be able to get there by sidewalk, it's still not compliant.
So
that'll be a big shift for a lot of people.
it will be a shift, and we're happy to work with communities. SMART does not build sidewalks, and I share that with people all the time, but we are more than happy to work with a community as they seek to put sidewalks in and make their infrastructure more pedestrian friendly. Then we will come and make sure that the bus stop is connected to that sidewalk. So you'll see on the left, those stops, those are all real stops we have right now. You will not see those anymore. You'll see those go away. And all new stops that come in will look like the stops on the right.
Is there any effort from SMART to coordinate with the cities and townships when it comes to these sidewalks? Is there any like ongoing conversations?
Absolutely. We do it all the time. We will sit with them. If we're putting new stops in, we'll go stop by stop and discuss exactly where it can be connected. If we're missing infrastructure, we will work with them to identify, is there a different place or could what needed to be put in? And we've had really good luck. I think that I think people just hadn't thought about it, and that's shifting as people want to create more walkable communities.
Aside, we've been doing a lot of work in the city of Roseville. The team's been really engaged, really understanding, what are the amenities and how it ties into the vision on that side. So we'd be happy to share any of those resources.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Go ahead, Harmony. Oh, right.
Harmony, I don't know if I understood. Are you saying that the stops on the left of the previous slide, we won't install any more new stops in that manner? You're not yanking the ones that exist in those conditions, are you?
We aren't right now. We are about to kick off a bus stop inventory, which will be a massive project where we go through all 6,000 stops and we look at their condition. We do a condition assessment. And at that time, we'll determine if those stops make sense. And if they do, then they'll be slated for improvement. And if they don't, if they are in an area where they just don't see any traffic, then we will take them out.
But the improvement again would have to come from the local government, right?
If it's a sidewalk improvement, the pads will be pouring.
As we get into that, I hope that we can work closely with the communities and notify the riders. I mean, if those stops are.
Absolutely. And we have a while because we're going to inventory first and see exactly what we have and what we need to fix.
One of the other things that we're going to take a look at for a whole host of reasons, most all of our bus stops are far side, which means a second stop. It also creates a safety hazard because the bus accelerates and then as soon as it gets across the intersection, it stops, which could lead to rear ends. Also makes it difficult when people are making right turns. So we're going to also be looking at, and we're going to have a conversation with DDOT about the same thing because they have far side bus stops as well. But we're looking to be able to make that transition. As I mentioned before, a second stop means money because then the bus has to accelerate again. So this will have a substantial impact on our fuel costs. And quite frankly, our greenhouse effect, because that's one. We'll be making about half we'll cut our stops probably close to in half by making that and moving them to the near side. So that's all part of quite frankly, with 6,000 bus stops, this is a multi-year approach because you just can't do this in a minute.
Harmony, the other thing that I think that would really be advantageous in this process is how we can align these enhancements that we're looking to make with existing funding and program outlets. So like, for example, the Transportation Alternative Program at SEMCOG, a lot of the communities in Southeast Michigan are very familiar with that and it's helped with non-motorized and multimodal enhancements. So maybe we could look at eligibility opportunities because if we can start preparing our communities that whether we're looking at programs within the TIP or the RTP, how they can begin to say, if I'm doing a sidewalk replacement program or looking to put in a non-motorized trail, here's how I can work with SMART to also optimize and maybe enhance scoring on that side. So maybe that's another avenue on that end. And then ultimately it gives us a greater likelihood of outcomes with regards to capital investment. The other thing is it'd be good to see how we can align this and engage the transportation service agencies, because I know our Department of Roads just had a public hearing last night for our Safe Streets for All program. And this would be very much something that I think we'd look to align with that to ensure that we're making ourselves more I guess, putting ourselves in a better light when it comes to scoring for grant opportunities, that whether they're coming through MDOT or our friends at the federal level too. Excellent.
That's great.
Sorry, we're
Um,
rambling. You've got one more slide, I think.
No, that's okay. And I'll just add to that, we also are working closely with MDOT as we think about this. And I'll use the example, Chesterfield Township. We've heard a lot about it. We have strong advocates for it, and we know that that's a priority. We certainly, I've driven down Gratiot many times and been disappointed in the condition of the stops. When we started talking to MDOT, we learned that this summer they're tearing that whole section of Gratiot out and repaving it. So they said, don't put your stops in because we will be ripping them back out. So we've worked with them. We've created a plan, and in 2026 is when we'll redo those stops. But we have to put it off because they would just be ripped out and all that investment would go away. So we're working closely with each community to try to identify those times when they're going to be doing the construction and make sure that that aligns with our plans too.
Harmony, the other thing that would be interesting to do is maybe how we could seek of doing a ride along through existing capital enhancement programs. For example, the city of Mount Clemens is a very robust sidewalk enhancement program that they facilitate every single year. So there could be an opportunity and even mirror some things that are happening in Ferndale too. So that would be interesting to see how this kind of gets integrated into some of those existing programs where we've been able to optimize some of those transportation funds.
We'd love that. And just the final one, amenities, that's a hot topic. People always want to know, how do they get a shelter? How do they get a bench? They want a trash can. Again, there's a method to how we figure these things out. All stops going forward will have at a minimum the bus stop sign and a landing pad. So they'll look like the stops on the left. Depending on the level of ridership and the other factors that I mentioned that are all part of a scoring criteria, it'll be determined whether they get a bench, a shelter, the trash can, or if they just have the bus stop sign and the landing pad. So we'll continue to talk with you about that. We're always happy to, walk through that with anyone that might want to understand it, but that's how we will be doing it going forward.
Harmony, I looked in the manual and I couldn't find it. It may not belong, but not long after I joined the board, and I know it was for sure before the millage, Danny spoke about the need for communities to understand the physical constraints of cutaway buses at medical facilities, dialysis, senior living. Just very simple turning radius. They can't back up. What's the canopy clearance for the ramp or the lift? Is that in here? Could it be put in here? I think that would be extremely helpful for local governments doing site plan review. I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I don't know that we addressed specifically the bus operation in this part, but it's certainly something we can look at.
Even if it's a relatively simple thing that we could get in the community. All they're looking for is a guide to how to review a site plan.
That's great. I'll connect with Danny to get more information. This is actually a 128-page manual, so I'm gonna print it off for you, but it's available to any community. We're hoping to share this, and we have a technical working group. We shared it with a lot of the city planners, city managers, but if you are aware of somebody that you think would benefit, we are happy to share it. There's an electronic version, so we won't print off 128 pages for them.
Harmony, version to the board, that'd be greatly appreciated, and we'll make sure to on our end, our Department of Roads, and see what type of inquiries there is on that end.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Okay. And then my last thing, and I will stop talking, is we have come to a great point in the Smarter Mobility project. You all have been with us, or most of you have been with us for the journey as we've kicked off this planning project to look at our routes and analyze them, our microtransit zones, and determine what SMART is going to look like in the next few years and where improvements can be made. And so we have our draft recommendations from our consultants. They're here with us today. And they are going to do the presentation for this. This is Janae and Arian from Baker Consultants. They had that plan.
I don't know if I could eat that.
Let's see.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having the opportunity to provide an update on the Smart Mobility Program. So just kind of a quick primer about what is the Smart Mobility Program. It's an opportunity for us to evaluate your fixed service, connector service, and more importantly, your current microtransit pilot program to determine how those things work together, which microtransit zones should be translated to permanent zones, and then how we can improve service design, efficiency, and operational effectiveness, all while making sure that we're having a cohesive, transparent, and consistent conversation with your community partners, your stakeholders, and your elected officials. So just a quick update on where we are in the process. It's been a pretty long road and we're nearing into our third year. And we do have a series of public meetings coming up that we'll talk about in a bit, but today we want to share with you the draft recommended plan. We are about here in the February cycle. We will go out to the public throughout the summer with the intention of having a final recommended plan early fall. So how do we get to this plan and who do we learn from? We talked to your riders in the October cycle. I know we talked a bit about your ridership being highest for fixed route in particular October. And so we took that opportunity to have an in-depth conversation with riders and to really learn what's important to them. Understanding these 5 things were most important, reliability being number 1, amenities, frequency, customer service, and then the coverage that's offered by Smart. We also had a secondary follow-up conversation with them about their priorities. And so we released 2 scenarios for folks to look at. When they told us that frequency was really important, we produced a network map that looked at improving frequency throughout the service area. We also produced a secondary alternative for them to review that looked at increased coverage. So could fixed route and flex go and cover more places? Ultimately understanding that what would come back would be a balance of the 2. But we do understand that people overwhelmingly supported increasing frequency while looking at places where additional connections were really necessary as part of the current network. And so that yielded the smarter network that provides more connections, more options, and more reliability every trip, every time. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague to kind of walk us through that draft recommended network.
Good afternoon. So you're going to see 2 maps really quickly, and we're going to walk through the map on the right in more detail. So the map on the left is your current system. The map on the right is the recommended system. Again, don't need to focus yet. We're going to go into it in a little more detail. All right, as promised, here it is in more detail. So the new system offers more connections to places that people wanted to get to. It has 4 new routes and 9 modified routes. In lots of cases where we modified a route, it was to straighten the route and make it more efficient and effective. It makes connections to about 80,000 more jobs than the current system and connects to over 10,000 additional businesses. It has more options than your current system. There's a lot more flex zones than it was in your current system. So that number increases to a total of 11 flex zones. And again, makes connections within those flex zones to over 700,000 additional people. And also there's a number of back-end policies and operational modifications to make the system more reliable. For example, we propose clock hand timing. So again, if you're on your stop and the bus normally arrives at your stop at 1:05, then you would expect, if it's an hourly route, that a bus gets there at 2:05, or if it's a 30-minute route, that it gets there at 1:35. And it would just repeat that, it at the 5 after point, it would always get there, right? So each route would have that clock hand timing. And there's 17 more routes than your current system that offer daily service. We'll talk about that in a little more detail on another slide. And there's 16 routes that offer 30 minutes or better frequencies. As you can see on the map on the right, the lines that are in orange are new routes that are proposed. So there's, again, a total of 4 new routes. And you can see there's a route in Wixom. There's a route along Mound Road. There's one along 4th Street that goes down to Trenton. And then there's an additional one that we split a route on Van Dyke. So it makes more connections to places that people said they wanted to get to. So you can see a number of the communities and municipalities listed on the slide here. The little icons that are populating along the map are some of those new connections. For example, there's a new Route 100 that's proposed through Hamtramck, which also connects to that new proposed route, the 500 on Mountain Road, which again makes a connection through a corridor that wasn't there. There's also, as we talked about, the flex zones. There's a new route, a new flex zone proposed in Romulus. There's one for Bloomfield, which covers portions of Bloomfield Township and West Bloomfield Township. There's a proposed community partnership operated flex zone in Rochester, as well as another community partnership operated flex zone in Macomb. We split the East we split the Hall Road flex zone into two, an east and a west, for operational purposes to make the zones meet the utilization numbers that Danny talked about during his presentation. And then again, a number of additional routes. Ones that we really like to talk about is the proposed route. That route was actually recommended by one of SMART's operators, who talked about the riders that he saw come into the bus route in Scrubs and trying to understand where they came from. So again, it will make a vital connection to Beaumont Trenton Hospital that's south of where your current service ends today. Again, the flex zones really kind of offer mobility for all. You saw in the presentation earlier on the paratransit and flex zone presentations that there are people with disabilities that can transition to use flex if they're able-bodied, and in some cases be able to have a more efficient trip than they could needing to pre-schedule on a current paratransit service. So they can, again, utilize your whole service offering to get to where they need to, and in some cases with more flexibility than they have today. And you can see the flex zones that are on the map. There is the Troy zone remains the same. The Romulus zone is new. The Bloomfield zone is new. Farmington is slightly expanded over what it was before. The same with the Pontiac zone. It has a couple of additional little modifications. For example, getting to the water park that's to the northwest in the zone. The Rochester flex zone being new, Macomb being new. And then in Dearborn, that zone is expanded slightly. There's a what we're calling the downriver flex. So it takes a portion of what was the Dearborn South zone and expands it over to Wyandotte and River Rouge. One of the other things that we're recommending as part of the system is a late night flex pilot zone. One of the things that we noticed as we looked at your data is some of the routes as it gets later into the evening, that they have lower ridership. So flexes would be more efficient during those time periods than continuing to operate some of those routes. So what we proposed is this late night flex that would operate from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., which would in essence guarantee a ride home for some people who work shift work and may get stuck later than when their normal route would end. So imagine if you would typically get off at 11, maybe your route was scheduled to end at 11:30. If you had to stay late, this would be a service that could really help you get home. You could you can go anywhere within that zone during that time period, and it would connect to the larger routes that already traverse the zone. So like the 160, the 162, the 261 and the 275. But the routes that have the lower ridership in the evenings would end service at 10, and that would be replaced by this late night flex. For people who would take this service, what they would find was they would no longer need to sit on a bus stop in the cold maybe at night, right? They can actually book a trip via flex, know when that trip's going to arrive and not have to wait as long, and then also have a trip that takes them directly to where they're going to go, as opposed to following the route and then still having to make that first and last mile connection. When it comes to reliability, we talked a little bit about the clock hand timing already. Again, another thing that we're trying to add is to time the layovers so that they're a little more effective. And the planning team does a great job with that today. There's some little tweaks that we're recommending as part of it to make the layovers coordinate. For example, we can try to schedule the routes where pulse points, where there may be 3 to 5 routes that come together at different times of the day. If we schedule them properly, we can actually time it so that those transfers are more seamless than they are today. Also slightly increasing the layover time for operators. One that gives them enough time to make sure, even if they may have lost some time along the route for things that happen, you know, accidents, delays along the route, they would still have an opportunity to get the necessary, go to the restroom, stretch your legs, and still be able to make up the time that they may have lost on a previous run. One of the service increases that we proposed is to make the fast routes more frequent. And one of the things we found during engagement is that people tied reliability and hours of service to the route being more frequent. So we propose the fast routes run every 20 minutes. It would have peak and off-peak time to, again, make sure that we're being effective with resources, efficient with resources. So they would run 20 minutes during from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Before and after that time period, they would operate every 30 minutes. And you can see the fast routes on the map here. High ridership routes will run every 30 minutes. And again, they have peak and off-peak timing as well. You see those being populated on the map right now. And for those, that peak period, again, it starts at 7 a.m. and goes to 7 p.m. We also offer more, recommend offering more daily service. So all but 7 routes out of the 45 that are included in the system would run 7 days a week. So that's an increase from 21 routes a day to 38 routes a day. I mean, from 21 to 38 per day. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Janae to talk about public engagement.
Thank you. So we're hoping or we're planning to take this draft recommended network to the public via the website as soon following this meeting, allowing them to have the opportunity to review the map, to review the hybrid solution and provide us comments. We also will be available in person at 4 public meetings, the first of which is Monday, March 31st. It's tentatively located at Sterling Heights, Macomb Community College Campus North, Pontiac Library, Tuesday, April 1st, second, the Dearborn Library, and then Thursday, April 3rd, Arlington at the Hawk. Our intention is also to provide an online public meeting for all who choose to participate on April 10th. Again, just to kind of give context, following this period of public engagement, we will provide all of that information to SMART. We will refine, the recommended network with the intention of SMART being able to go out for public hearings later on this fall. Looking at implementation in late 2025, early 2026. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much for the information today. Very much appreciate the effort by the entire Michael Baker and Associates team. It's been refreshing not only to see how integrated and ingrained you've been in the community, but Aaron, even the time that you spent with us in Macomb County and a number of our community providers, I think it's yielded a lot of insights into how we're really trying to transform the system and really provide those additional connections and options to riders. Any other thoughts, insights? Just Resident.
Question. Is there an estimated operational and capital cost with this proposal, or will there be when we finalize it?
There is 183 million, but I'll let Aaron give you the details.
She's spot on with 183 million. And that's just from an annual operating cost. On the capital side, there will be an increase in capital costs. For example, clock hand timing requires more vehicles than what you have today, plus the additional new routes would have costs. And we're outlining those into an implementation plan, which has it broken into 3 phases.
And the proposal that you showed today, that's not the unconstrained one. That's still being developed.
That is, yep, right. You're exactly right. This is the constraint based on the realistic budget that you could implement today. We are working on one that includes what you could do with an additional 20 million, as well as what you could do with an additional 100 million.
Good, thank you.
Blue sky scenarios, right?
There is one more thing is that as part of this, and it's going to have, it could potentially offset some of the capital costs associated with the additional vehicles, is the diversification of the fleet. This does not require 40-foot buses everywhere. In fact, 40-foot buses everywhere would run counter to this. So the assets that we would use to replace some of those, while they need more of them, they would be smaller and therefore less expensive. And this also addresses those issues for some people who say, well, why do you have these empty buses out here? Well, if it only carries 12 people, you know, it's different than one that carries 40.
Absolutely. Any other questions from members of the board? Seeing none, are we approving the draft plan for dissemination, receive and file? Motion receive and file?
So
Been moved?
Support.
Supported? Any further discussion? Seeing that none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Excellent. Appreciate the staff for all the updates today. Tremendous work across the board. Thank you, Mr. Farrell.
Sorry.
Mr. Ressigan.
Could you please email us that slideshow? It was very good.
Yeah, that'd be great. Excellent. Appreciate that. All right, we are going to move on to new business. First, we are going to start off with item number 12A, a resolution authorization to award a contract for towing services for FICT paratransit and support services. Luan, if you want to give us an update real quick.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Smarts Board. It is a recommendation that the board adopts the attached resolution authorizing the award of a contract for towing services for fixed route, paratransit, and support vehicles to Boulevard and Trumbull. This is a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options at a total amount not to exceed $1,494,000 for the 5 years. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Any questions or comments from members of the board? Mr. Turpin.
just a motion to table this item for further discussion.
Motion on the table. Can I get support, please? Support. Been supported. Mr. Farrell.
They're the only towing company in town. If we're not able to award this, our buses are gonna be stuck.
So
Now, hang on a second. Have, as I told the board before, our intention is to buy tow trucks. We put a solicitation out for tow trucks that we didn't get bidders on. We're revising that solicitation because some of those things that caused them not to bid on it were things that were internal to our procurement process. So while this is a 3-year contract, we're not going to use them for 3 years. This is really more of a stopgap until such time as we can get these trucks and get people trained. So how many, we were talking about buying 3 trucks, 1 for each garage?
Yes.
And we've got the dollars to do it. So it's not a matter of that. It's just a matter of getting them here. This is the same way that DDOT has its own tow trucks. And we're using the DDOT spec, as a matter of fact. So once we've taken care of the procurement issues that we've had on our side, there shouldn't be an issue with awarding a contract to be able to get vehicles. And in fact, Luan, correct me if I'm wrong, in anticipation for this, we actually have an upgrade that we pay to mechanics who get trained to be tow truck drivers.
Yes, every mechanic that actually is qualified will receive an increase.
So we put all of that into this contract in anticipation of having tow trucks.
Okay, Mr. Turvey.
Yeah, is this contract retroactive or is there a current vendor right now in place?
The current vendor is Boulevard and Trumbull.
The current vendor is Boulevard, okay, and this renewal right here, when's the effective date?
The effective date is April 1st,
April 1st?
2025, yes.
Okay. And the current contract expires at the end of this month?
Yes.
End of next month?
Yes.
Okay. My motion doesn't change.
Okay. There is a motion on the table to table for reconsideration at our next meeting. I believe there was a second on that motion, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So we will be taking the motion to table until our March board meeting. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes and we will reconvene on this matter next month. Next, we are going to discuss a ratification for payment of services rendered for storage tank inspection and maintenance. Mr. Burke.
Yes. It's a recommendation that the board Tax resolution authorizing for payment for services rendered for storage tank inspections and maintenance services to Phoenix Environmental. This is authorized payment for services rendered in the amount not to exceed $23,859.01. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Any questions from members of the board? Chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're going to move on to item C, ratification and amendment for the payment and services rendered for the authorization of contract amendments. Number one, to increase funds for sludge and wastewater removal. Mr. Burt.
Yes, it is a recommendation that the board adopts the attached resolution authorizing payments for services rendered and contract amendment number one for sludge and waste removal with Burke's Works Environmental to authorize payment for additional services rendered during option year one for $14,443.87 and approve to increase funding at a cost not to exceed $30,000 for option year one ending April 30th, 2025, and increase funding at a cost not to exceed $45,000 for option year two beginning May 1st, 2025 through April 30th, 2026, for aggregated cost not to exceed $399,943.87 for the 3-year period. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Ratification.
So moved.
Been moved,
Second.
been supported. See no further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, the ratification, the payment for services rendered for lift hoist and repair services and inspections. Mr. Burt.
It's the recommendation that the board adopts the attached resolution authorizing a ratification for payment for services rendered for lift and hoist repair services and inspections to Dow's Equipment to authorize payment for services rendered during option year two in the amount not to exceed $11,715.72. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, chair would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Been moved,
Support.
supported. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks,
Thanks.
Mr. Burt. Appreciate it. Alrighty, next, Mr. Evans, we're gonna go to item 12E, a resolution of authorization to award a contract for a business continuity and disaster recovery solution.
Good afternoon, Board. Staff recommends the Board approve the resolution authorizing an award of contract for a business continuity and disaster recovery solution at a cost not to exceed $647,216.54. This will be paid for using capital funds. SMART requires a disaster recovery solution for business continuity. This contract will provide a cloud solution that will allow SMART to continue to provide services in case of an interruption. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Appreciate it. Any questions from members of the board on this item? Seeing none, chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Been moved
Support.
and supported. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're gonna go on to item F, a resolution for authorization to award a contract for AVL hardware warranty software and training services. Mr. Evans.
And staff recommends authorization to award a contract for its automatic vehicle location system for fixed route for hardware warranty, software maintenance, and training services at a cost not to exceed $3,243,967. This will be funded by operating funds. SMART requires continual hardware and software support with its AVL system. The AVL system provides voice communication, location of voice communications, location, and passenger information for SMART's fixed route services. This contract also provides annual training for all components of the AVL systems on an annual basis. This contract also includes 2 years of on-site training for staff to improve their knowledge. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Been moved,
Second.
been supported. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Mel. Appreciate it. Alrighty, we're gonna move on to number 13, board member business. Any comments, questions, concerns, general insights, observations, Brett?
Only that I will not be here at the next meeting.
Okay. All right, thanks for the heads up on that one. Any other? Board? And as always, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Been moved.
Support.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.